Okay, great. So back here with a lesson. This is the CloseAbility Academy lesson. Those of you who are members of CloseAbility Academy will have access to this lesson, and then on future coaching calls can bring questions. I'm here with Sheritha Miller, who is one of our CloseAbility agents. She actually runs the Abandoned Homes Project workflow here in Cleveland that we use to test everything before we send it out. So those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Kevin Ra. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at CloseAbility. I'm also the inventor of the technology on which the CloseAbility software sits. I've closed somewhere around 300 real estate deals. We haven't gone back and counted them, but we're somewhere around 300. I think I'm at 276 single families, distressed single families bought and sold in my career. I've also closed about 3,500 transactions as an escrow officer or a title examiner or both, including having been an escrow officer on deals for Ocwen, Altisource, US Bank, Ocwen. I think I might have already said Ocwen, and some of the largest servicers in the world. So I've been around the block a few times with distressed real estate over a 26-year career. And today I want to talk about something very specific. So our Audience Igniter series, which is only available to agents and attorneys that are in CloseAbility Academy. This is the series where we teach you how to build an audience of people that are relying on you to be a distressed real estate expert. So this is a 3-part lesson. Today we're doing lesson 1. And within lesson 1, I'm going to show you how to build a whole team of attorneys that not only send you their deals, but actually go out into the world and look for the type of deals that have the type of issues that you've proven that you could solve, and bring those deals into their office so that they can then call you. So essentially what you're doing with this framework is you're learning how to turn attorneys into your lead source. Rather than, people spend crazy amounts of money on distressed real estate leads, these lead gen platforms. And as we teach in this program that no other program teaches, is that lead gen is not in and of itself the way to success in the distressed real estate business. If it was, then Google and Neil Patel and Gary Vaynerchuk and all of those companies out there that are the best companies in the world at simply getting someone to click on a Google ad and give up your information so someone can contact you later, they would all be driving the distressed real estate business. And it just so happens that that single family homes in America are the largest asset class in the world by far. So this is the most valuable asset class on earth. And it would make sense that these top lead gen companies, they would be in this business if all we had to do was lead gen. And any of you that have been around me for any period of time have heard me tell the story a million times about how when I was an investor using Pipedrive, and I got my direct mail response rate up to 36%, where the national average was half of 1%, I just assumed that I was getting ready to be the richest person ever in the history of the world. In fact, I'm from Cleveland. I live in Cleveland. I started visiting Rockefeller's grave every week to warn him that I was getting ready to, take his place as the most successful entrepreneur in the history of the world. I'm like 36%. And what I quickly discovered, and the reason I started building a system that eventually became CloseAbility, and those of you who know the story know that it was originally built for BlackRock's Home Partners of America to help them close about 12,000 homes a year. That was the original purpose of the system. That those of you who know what happened to Home Partners know that didn't pan out. But the underlying technology is what we've now released to agents and attorneys as CloseAbility. And so in order to close that many deals, it's not about lead gen. It's about understanding your ideal transaction profile, which means, how do I not just get property owners to call me back? How do I get the property owners to call me back that have the actual deals that I can close? And how do I figure that out before I start working on the deal? Otherwise, I'm going to work for $0 and 0 cents an hour. So this is why attorneys are such an untapped gold mine. And it's not just about going to attorneys as an investor. saying, hey, I want to buy up all your properties. I hate to tell you this, but most of the time when an investor is able to successfully buy a property through probate, it is normally because somebody did something unethical. Because if it's a disciplined investor that's put in a disciplined offer where they'll actually be able to make money, chances are it was not the highest available offer that was presented to the probate court, because if the property had been put out there on an auction or put out there on a listing, some undisciplined new investor would have come along and offered some ridiculous price, and that probably would have been the highest and best offer presented to the court. So that is not a strategy that you can grow on. You can always find an attorney or two who's willing to work with you, so to speak, and I say that in quotes because I'm not sure if that's what's best for the estate, if that's their client. You can always find one or two, but you're not going to scale like that. You're not going to find a lot of good deals like that, right? And so this is where the triple threat of being an agent and an investor, buyer's agent, listing agent, investor, that's the BLI framework that we teach. This is where putting that framework into play is going to serve you well, because as we teach in CloseAbility Academy, you can start off as the listing agent on a property that you really don't even make that much money on. And that listing can then become a lead magnet to bring you more investor clients, to bring you more attorney clients, and also to position yourself in the marketplace as an expert. So there's a lot of things we can do off of one listing that other than just make money off that one listing. And we can also, as an agent, as a listing agent, now you can work with the attorney to secure the highest and best offer and present that to the court. And that is going to go through every single time, almost without fail. So attorneys are an untapped gold mine that we want to learn how to tap into. So what's the trick? One, you got to win their trust. And two, you got to offer them something that makes you different than all of the other agents that are trying to get their business, right? A unique selling proposition. And we're going to show you today how to use CloseAbility and what it does as that unique selling proposition, so that you can talk to attorneys and say, okay, yeah, well, 100 agents call me all the time. Okay, great. I'm the 101st agent to call you. Let me tell you what I have that those other agents don't, right? Because if you've got a property that's a probate and it's a short sale and there's an IRS tax lien and there's a second mortgage and there are 5 judgment lien holders because grandma was co-signing for all her grandkids to get loans and cars and credit cards, and the grandkids didn't pay, those other 100 real estate agents are not going to be able to close that deal, lacking the technology that CloseAbility allows me to put in play in these transactions. It's just not going to happen. Or if they do close it, it's going to take forever. It's going to take 6 months, a year and a half. And now you can go into these offices confidently, talk to attorneys, knowing that you can get deals closed, and even the most difficult ones, you get them wrapped up in 60 to 90 days, which means on-time closing, which means on-time money in your bank account. So that's what we're going to go over today. And so that's the big shift, right? When I talk to agents that are also investors, attorneys that are also investors, and they're trying to scale in distressed, the belief is that, oh, I just need to generate thousands of leads. Well, I've already explained why that's not how you grow in distressed. Now, in the regular real estate market, right, the 3.6 million residential deals that close every year outside of the distressed market, according to the NAR, National Association of Realtors, that's great. You do lead gen all day long, right? You get someone who wants to sell their house for $300,000 and they owe $200,000. Great. Generate those leads as much as you can. But when you come down into the distress space, especially trying to establish that you can close distress deals as a buyer's agent for investors, and trying to establish yourself also as an investor where you get the best deals, well, the best deals are found where there's the most distress. Most of the best deals I've ever closed were deals that nobody else simply could have closed. And attorneys and agents at title companies had dealt with other people trying to close those deals. And because they were unclosable without our platform, they then became easy leads for us because everybody's desperate to close the deal. And now that everybody's desperate to close the deal, it needs to be understood that I'm probably going to walk out of here with a bag of cash, and not a small bag of cash, because the only way for all these people to get paid off this deal is for it to close. And I've established I'm the only route to that end goal. And that's exactly what I'll show you how to do. So that's the big belief that we have to challenge always in distressed, is that you need all these thousands of distressed sellers to call you. No, you don't. You're going to spend a ton of money on operations. You're not going to close deals proportionate with your lead gen efforts, right? You'll be able to generate more leads. That's not going to necessarily translate into more closings. And one good bankruptcy attorney can send you 10 deals a year. One good probate attorney can send you 10 deals a year. So leveraging these relationships is the way to go. So let's take a look at Joanna. Okay, so right here on the screen. So those of you who don't know, in this program, every lesson has a deed associated with it. A filed deed that was reviewed by an attorney, in our case, 2 attorneys on every single transaction, and stamped by a major title insurance company. Why is this important? Because there's just a ton of people out here running around claiming to teach distressed real estate and distressed real estate workflows. And to be honest with you, it's very easy to see. Most of them have never closed a deal in their life. They definitely haven't closed a lot of deals because the surface level things they teach are just that. They're very, very surface level. And most of the information they're teaching is coming from the regular real estate business and not from distressed real estate expertise. So in this system, we practice what's called transaction-based real estate learning, which is closed transaction-based real estate learning, which is how we basically a fancy way of saying every single one of our lessons has the deed attached to it. If it doesn't have a deed attached to it, then we wouldn't teach it. And you shouldn't listen to anyone who can't produce deeds to prove that they've used the workflows they're teaching you to actually close deals at scale. That's the other important thing, at scale. I've seen plenty of people close one deal, make $50,000. I made $54,000 on the first real estate deal that I ever closed. Had to split it with my cousin. Long story there for a different video. Eddie Murray, the baseball player, was the lender on the deal, the hard money lender, and let's just say that Eddie didn't get all his money back. That wasn't my fault. That was my cousin's. But anyways, so 2019, 12/30/2019. So we're going to go back in time here, and we're going to talk about a transaction that we closed where an attorney was the lead source, and the deal closed. We got paid, and it was a situation where lacking the technology we have, it wasn't going to close. And so in this case, you had a woman who died, left a house to her daughter. Then her daughter died. And then there was no will for the daughter. So the ownership of the house here in Cleveland, Ohio, gets spread out over a bunch of cousins who all lived out of state, some of which had not talked to the mom or daughter in years. So so on top of that, the house was condemned. The city of South Euclid, which is a suburb of Cleveland, wanted to tear the house down. And we had to get a variance from them just to rehab the house because they'd already condemned it. And on top of that, no one had paid the taxes in years. So you had a third-party tax lien to a company called FIG, who buys most of the tax liens in Cleveland. And you had the actual taxes owed to the government that were not paid. So those of you who have learned and understand our co-op score framework, you're talking about needing cooperation from multiple heirs, a probate court, a third-party tax lien holder, a government tax lien holder, and in this case, 2 approvals from the probate court because you had to probate the mom's interest to the daughter and then had to probate the daughter's interest to the cousins. And so a very complicated transaction. So in this case, Melvin Banchik, who is an attorney who I've done transactions with for 25 years, he always brings me the hard stuff that nobody else could close. And then, like I say, that's where I can become a very expensive person to know. Kind of like the old joke that Richard Pryor tells: you meet a lawyer, you shake his hand, and you already owe him $500. Well, if a lawyer and a title company and a probate court are bringing me a transaction and it's already been established that no one else could close it, then it becomes very difficult to argue with how much money I'm going to make off this transaction because apparently I'm the only one that can close it. how I'm going to show you how we use the CloseAbility app to close this deal and close deals like it. So this is an example of the benefit of having, in this case, a probate lawyer, and also in this case, a probate lawyer who is recovering money for Medicaid or recovering money for a nursing home, because if there's a transaction to be done, those people aggressively want their money. So you have a cooperating party if you can show them, I can get this deal closed. So let's take a look at Routific, please. Oh, on the call with me, Joanna Cabrera, Keo Baliut, co-founders, one co-founder not here, June, who's our CTO, who works on an opposite schedule. So while we're sleeping, he's working, fixing all of our technology, making sure it works smooth for everybody who's coming on to use it the next day. So how do we get you to the attorneys so that you can deliver the message that you are an expert? Well, the way we do that is with the Routific app. So those of you who have been around the program have heard me tell the story about how we launched CloseAbility in SaaS Academy. This is the largest software incubator in the world. And what we learned in SaaS Academy is there were a bunch of people running around saying that their real estate apps, were the next best thing. And, all you have to do is buy their app and you'd become a master investor. If you could pay $200 a month for something and be able to replace me, who's bought, almost 300 houses at this point, that would be one heck of a thing, which means everybody with $200 would be able to do exactly what I did for 26 years. Not likely. It is more likely, in fact, it's the truth, that all of these apps, whether they're routing or Deal Machine, PropStream, doesn't matter which real estate app you're using, Follow Up Boss, Dotloop, they're all part of a tech stack that an agent/investor or attorney/investor needs to be able to source and close deals at scale. Part of a tech stack, right? And so if you know anything about technology, there has to be something in that tech stack. You can go out and buy all the apps you want to, and that's what we see so many people do. They go out and buy all these apps, then they go in API Nation or Zapier, and they link them all together, and they've got all these automations running. The problem is there's no logic in that tech stack that was actually built by somebody who had closed a bunch of deals, because if a person has closed a bunch of deals, they can start at the end and work backwards when they build their workflows. If a person has not closed a bunch of deals, when they build their workflows, they start at the beginning and then they claim their workflow gets you to the end, but it's not going to get you to the end at scale, because you're going to encounter issues in these transactions that their technology simply, it doesn't even contemplate, right? Doesn't even contemplate it. Like in this case, what technology other than CloseAbility is contemplating 3 generations down, right? Mom dead, mom passes away, daughter passes away, no will, no relatives anywhere near the subject property, got to go out of state, which means now you got to do skip traces and deliver direct mail and get people to cooperate and sign waivers, which means now you got to be able to dispatch notaries to people in different states at different times for different closings. So how are you going to do all that and be efficient if you don't have the core technology with the logic to tell you what to do in the first place to get the deal closed? It's not going to happen. So you're going to just try deals by trial and error, which means you are likely to do what I did before I invented CloseAbility. I filled up a deal pipeline in Pipedrive, ultimately discovering that most of those deals were never going to close. And I needed to know that in the beginning, not in the end. So in this case, this is one of the routes that we built for one of our 2 of our agents in Memphis, Jordan Ray Walter Jones. Jordan's with EXP in Memphis, great agent. I forget who Walter's broker is, also a great agent, both in the Bigger Pockets audience. If you're buying houses in Memphis, these are 2 pretty good darn agents to work with. Had a chance to speak to both of them personally when they were coming into the program. Not just fantastic agents, but also fantastic people. So what we see here is, so this is a route where we are now sending agents on a route where they can, in a very time efficient way, very fuel efficient way, reach 15 agents, 15 attorneys in their particular markets. Very important, in their markets where they do deals. And in this case, it's showing you that this route's going to take about an hour and 42 minutes to complete. So just think about that for a moment. You could invest an hour and 42 minutes, stop and talk to 15 attorneys, and have some information to leave behind. And all you're trying to do on these calls is convince those attorneys to book a Zoom call, a 15-minute consultation, right? And the beauty of that is we can be on the call with you and the attorneys, and that way you don't have to memorize everything CloseAbility does. And once we get to that call, in the background, excuse me, I'm in Cleveland, so I'm going to cough. It's that time of year where it's 75 at one point of the day, then it's 35 and snowing in the same damn day. So all of us are coughing and hacking. So when you get to the attorney and you get them on a Zoom call, understand that before the Zoom call, the CloseAbility staff in the background will have gone through the transactions that these attorneys are presenting to the courts. It could be a bankruptcy attorney, could be foreclosure defense, could be a attorney that specializes in being a guardian ad litem in guardianship cases, which are historically very easy to close. You can, in our co-op score framework, we show you how to even make those transactions easy to close. You have a person who has not passed away yet, but they're mentally incompetent and the court has taken over their affairs. Historically, a nightmare deal to close. We get them closed in 30 to 60 days consistently and have the deeds to prove it. So in this case, we're going to spend an hour, 42 minutes. We're going to get attorneys, stop by, talk to them. And again, this is the other thing. This reliance on digital lead sourcing, right? It's insane. And even within the SaaS Academy program, where Coach Kyle from a company called Voris, shout out to Coach Kyle, who teaches the sales development lessons and business development lessons in SaaS Academy, he's teaching us to this day that the biggest mistakes salespeople are not making are picking up the phone and calling people that they can help and not doing face-to-face. And, you know, the famous story that we teach in the academy is, you know, E.F. Hutton in CloseAbility Academy. E.F. Hutton was one of the first financial advisors to scale the business into a 7, 8, 9-figure business. And the way his business worked is they went and knocked on doors and talked to people face-to-face. I used to work, when I was in college, I worked for Scott Fetzer, who owns Kirby. We did door-to-door sales, and I ran a sales team that did door-to-door sales, still knocking on people's doors. So this is very, very effective to go talk to people and have human-to-human interaction. And so we get these people, these attorneys on a call. We're able to go over transactions that they're familiar with because they're their transactions. And from there, we're able to show them insights that they would not have been able to see before. Right? What this does is position you as an expert agent with a unique selling proposition, something you can offer that other agents can't. And obviously, now the attorneys want to refer transactions to you as an agent. Every once in a while, there may be a transaction that an attorney's handling where you can buy as an investor. It does happen. But for the most part, what we're looking for here are listing agent opportunities that then can turn into dual agency buyer's agent opportunities. So one transaction and you're getting paid twice. So that's ideally what we're looking for when we go meet attorneys. And now we can offer them something that no other agent can deliver. So it's really just that simple. And we give you, and after this call, Sheritha, we already have letters ready. We'll go over everything, make sure you're comfortable with the messaging. But when you go out on your route, we will provide you with letters that you can simple staple or paper clip your business card to and run the route, stop and talk to the attorneys. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not. If they're there, great. We'll also, by the way, well, we'll get to the timing in a different call. But that's the key, is that you have information to leave behind if they're not there. And now the purpose is simply to turn these attorneys into your lead gen sources, right? Now, very quickly, and I'll wrap this up. Once you get attorneys as clients, so here in Cleveland, I've had the privilege of having worked with so many attorneys that now the probate court for the last 15, 20 years knows who I am. And the probate judges were probate magistrates back when I first started. And I've been able to grow as these people grew and had more prominence within the probate court. Same thing in the bankruptcy court. In fact, I was even given the opportunity about maybe 12 years ago to actually teach a class to to bankruptcy attorneys down in the bankruptcy court here in Cleveland, because one of our main clients was the bankruptcy trustee. And whenever she had situations where she was the trustee and she was trying to figure out, okay, is there a way to sell this property? You know, it's got a bunch of liens on it. You know, it's owned by two people and one of them passed away and the other one filed bankruptcy. She had all these complicated transactions. And once she started working with us and was able to either close them or, just as importantly, realize which one she couldn't close before she wasted a bunch of time and resources, which she'd have to then go to the court for and get reimbursement, then we became very well known within the bankruptcy court. So getting attorneys on your side is very, very important in the distress space, because once you get the attorneys on your side, the next people you get on your side through those relationships are the magistrates and judges. That's very, very important, right? Because if you can get the judges on your side, guess what? Now those judges have the authority to appoint you as an agent in other matters, maybe dealing with attorneys you've never even met before. And now you're leveraging the court system for lead gen. Now, that's another lesson. Today we're talking about attorneys. The next lesson talks about how you can get different government entities to also be your lead gen sources and to also send you transactions with the power that governments have behind them. And I'll show you how to leverage that. That's very, very unique. And that's something I was also able to leverage here in Northeast Ohio over my career, and something you can leverage in your market. So in closing, what we want to focus on is getting attorneys onto a Zoom call. That's the call to action. Impressing them with a technology suite that other agents don't have, and being able to talk about how that technology can help them with the current transactions they're doing, even ones that might be listed with another agent, so that they now send you their transactions in the future, and you can leverage them to close distressed deals. Okay. Sheritha, any questions? I know I talk fast and hose people with information.
No, I get that.
Fantastic. So really quickly, Joanna, let's bring up CloseAbility. So we have a file, one of Abandoned Homes Project files. You know, we use them to test everything. And most of the files that come into Abandoned Homes Project don't close, which is how we figure out how to find the deals that ain't going to close. Because if you know which ones ain't going to close, then guess what? You just work on the other ones, and they're the ones that are going to close. You don't even have to master understanding which file the deals go in. All you have to do is master figuring out which ones are not going to close. And then everything else takes care of itself. So this is a transaction that came in. I believe this came in from direct mail, right, Joanna?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this was part of a direct mail campaign. And those of you who are in CloseAbility Academy understand the pre-probate. So every investor, every agent knows how to go after probates. The problem is that the way you're finding the probates is from people that have already died. And most of the time there's been a probate. And now if you can see it, all your other competitors can see it, which means it's not a competitive advantage. You can have a competitive advantage because you're willing to outwork them. So everybody has the same data, but because I'm willing to work harder, I'm going to close more deals. But you don't have a competitive advantage when it comes to the insight. So this is a property that runs through our pre-probate workflow, which means owner passed away, family never filed the probate, And so now all of a sudden we can send direct mail to heirs, get them interested in working with us. But in our system, unlike every other system, you get the owner call in. They say, great, I want to work with you. And then you put them in your CRM, and then you get to work in the deal. Well, if you hang around us long enough, we'll teach you that that's not necessary, and it's actually insane. And it's not going to work if you want to scale. If you want to, if you want to run a business where you're closing 4, 5, 10 transactions a year, fantastic. If you want to run a business where you're closing 40, 50 deals a year, where you're representing investors that are buying 200, 300 houses a year, and you want to go into the distressed space to get them the best deals to, again, set you apart from the other agents. If you want that business, then you're going to need some technology that does something before you put that deal in your CRM. And in our system, of course, that's the closability analysis. Target the target owner or homeowner, distressed seller, whatever you want to call it. They contact you. And before that deal goes in your CRM, there has to be another way to do due diligence to see if it should go in your CRM. And if it does go in your CRM, where should it go in your CRM? So in this case, we have a homeowner call in. Excuse me, the nephew of the homeowner. So homeowner died, no children. And before she died, she appointed a nephew, power of attorney, who lives in a different state. So direct mail to the the nephew, and then to his cousins who were also listed on the probate paperwork before the owner died, and she was made a ward of the court because she had dementia or Alzheimer's, one of the two. Well, one's the other. And so direct mail to the heirs. One heir calls back and says, oh, yeah, that was my aunt, but she was my step aunt. Okay, well, you're out. Okay, yeah, she's your aunt by marriage. That doesn't entitle you to inherit anything in the absence of a will. So all of a sudden, one homeowner, done. Don't have to worry about him. Second heir calls in and says, hey, I was the power of attorney before my aunt died. I should get everything. Nope, no will. Sorry. Power of attorney ended the moment your aunt died. Actually, the moment she became a ward of the court because she was mentally incapacitated. Nope. You can inherit something, but it's going to have to be according to what we call descent and distribution, the probate laws of the state where the property is located, which in this case, Ohio. So, but he said, hey, I'll cooperate. I want my share from the sale of the house. Okay, great. We move on to the next heir, and this is where things start to get sticky. So the next heir is also so this is a niece, and it turns out that she has schizophrenia, and she herself is a ward of the same probate court that her aunt was a ward of 15 years ago. And so now all of a sudden we've got one owner who cooperate. Now we have another owner who cannot cooperate on her own, which means there has to be a guardianship. So now you need a probate from the aunt to the heirs. And then one of the heirs is a ward of the court, which means, okay, she needs a guardian to speak on her behalf, which means you have to do a land sale. Is that a deal killer for us? No, because we've done situations. We have workflows for probate guardianship. This isn't the first time we've seen this before. The problem is that it turns out from our communication with the people handling the estate for the heir who has schizophrenia that there was another brother of the aunt who died who had more kids than they can count. And they don't even know their names. Now all of a sudden you have a straight up nightmare. So in this particular case, you have two choices. You can either run the probate guardianship workflow, or, well, if you run that workflow, you're going to have to serve all these other heirs by publication, and you don't know who the heck they are. That's the only choice here. So in order to get this deal closed, you got to do a probate from the aunt to the heirs, and then go back in that same probate court, do a guardianship for the heir who has schizophrenia, and then serve all of the other cousins, who we're going to call John and Jane Doe, service by publication. So service by publication is not cheap. You're probably talking about $10,000 just to get the probate workflow going. And now that probate court still has to approve that guardianship sale. And the probate court is going to want to say, put the house on the market, and get me the best deal. Well, guess what? You can't do that, because if we're putting up to $10,000 to start the deal, no one else is going to get this house, right? We're getting the house. And so now that has to be approved by the probate court, because you are asking them to make an exception to what the law is telling them to do. So this is a very, very good example of a live transaction that we have in our pipeline, and actually got frustrated and killed this deal. I'm going to tell my team to put it back into my pipeline. I actually got mad and killed the deal because it looked like it was going to be easy, and then boom, 90 cousins come out of the woodwork, but it's okay. We could deal with it. So this is a example of a transaction that is mostly literally unclosable outside of our platform. On our platform, I could probably wrap this thing up in 120 days. If my money's there, which in my portfolio, $21,000 for a property that I am going to eventually wholesale is my minimum profit that I'll do a deal for. Even if I put the 10 in, the tax delinquent 16, so I'm 26, figure another 3 or 4 for title and escrow. So I'm going to be in this for somewhere around 30. Just so happens that, and any of you have been on the calls where I've talked about the workflow we run, where there's government money on the back end. This is one of those areas where there's a ton of government money on the back end, which means my wholesale price to another investor can be high, because he or she or they are going to recover some of my upcharge when they purchase the house. They're going to recover that on the back end when they get done rehabbing it, assuming they sell it through this program, which is middle income housing opportunity money. And those of you who have signed buyers agreements with us in the various states where we do deals, and one of those entities on those agreements is CloseAbility's middle income housing fund. Well, that's what this is. This is why that fund was created, because there's so much money out there for housing opportunities, affordable housing opportunities for middle income families, that when you go into the areas where that money is available and tie that money into your acquisition workflow, it gives you a way to buy and sell properties and list properties and sell them that other investors simply aren't aware of or don't have. And one of the things we track in the system is where that money is available. So this is a really good example of a file that you can talk to an attorney about with a level of insight that the attorney has never, ever seen before. In fact, the biggest objection I ever got from talking to attorneys is at the beginning, when they tell me how they've been doing probates for 30 years and I can't tell them anything and they know everything and there's no situation they haven't seen. And my response was, yeah, you've seen all the situations, but I've closed through all those situations, right? You saw it and then had to kill the deal, and it was never able to go through because you couldn't figure out the Rubik's Cube that was required to get that deal closed. And we've got CloseAbility, which is the Rubik, we can solve that Rubik's Cube in half a second. 540 milliseconds is the amount of time it takes CloseAbility to scan a file once we put the data in and get to your order. So scroll down here real quick. So these are the guesstimates. So this is what our technology guessed is that. So CloseAbility grade C. So this is an okay file. In most pipelines, this is an F. It's unclosable. It's telling us we have about a C chance to close this transaction. And then once we go in here and start doing our overrides, which those of you in CloseAbility Academy learn the overrides within the software, where we go in and say, yeah, the system saw this, but based on my experience, we can do this. And again, why did Zillow lose $505 million buying houses, trying to buy houses? It's because, in my opinion, their system did not have overrides, which allowed someone with local knowledge of the market to override what their AI or their algorithms were telling them to buy and how much to pay. CloseAbility is not built with that same flaw. We understand that there are times when a human being needs to be involved in the house buying process, because that human being is going to make a better decision than any AI could ever make. So C deal, we're going to work on this, keep shooting videos. We're going to try to get this deal closed. It doesn't have the highest chance of closing, but these are the type of deals that we work on in the background so that we can hone our skills and hone our technology. And these are the type of deals that probate attorneys will be more than happy to send to you. And I even had an attorney tell me once, he goes, every time I send you a deal, I laugh and I kick back because I go, oh, he's going to waste a bunch of time on this one. There's no way he's going to close it. He said, and then you come back, 45 days later and say, okay, well, here's everything you need to give to the probate judge so that we can get the sale approved. Go ahead and get that sale approved and we're clear to close, cash buyers, XYZ. So any questions there before I wrap everything up? Any questions? Great. I'll assume there are none. So let's go ahead and wrap up this lesson. And then we will, on the back end here off camera, get into the nut and bolts of the route that we're sending out, the information we're sending out, and make sure that everything is cool so we can go ahead and get you out on that route. Great. Thanks.